Welcome everyone! Today we have quite a famous game played between Wilhelm Steinitz and Curt von Bardeleben, played in Hastings in 1895. Let's just get it started right away. Steinitz had white and he played e4, e5, knight f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, the Italian opening, and after bishop to c5 we have the Giuoco piano, meaning quiet game. White played c3, planning d4, knight to f6, attacking the pawn, since white can no longer play knight c3 to defend it. So now white either has to defend with d3 or open up the position with d4. Steinitz chose to open the position, e takes d, c takes, and now bishop to b4 check. And this move underlines the problem with d4, since white hasn't yet castled, he doesn't have the time to keep pushing his pawns up the board. Nevertheless, white's position isn't too bad either. If white instead had tried bishop to d2, then black could have played bishop takes bishop, and after knight takes d5, black's breaking up white's pawn center, and white really has no advantage anymore. That's why after bishop to b4, white played knight to c3, and here came d5 anyway, but this isn't as good as in the variation I just showed with bishop to d2, because white still has his dark square bishop in this case, and that offers much more attacking chances. Nowadays they play something else, they capture on e4, and after castles and bishop takes, white goes d5, so black is a piece up for the moment, but two of his pieces are hanging. Black plays bishop to f6, rook to e1, pinning the knight, and after black saves the c knight, white captures on e4, but modern theory shows that white still lacks enough compensation for the pawn. Anyway, after knight to c3, black played d5, white captured on d5, knight takes, castles, and now bishop to e6 was played. Black could have won a pawn, but probably that wouldn't be smart. If black had tried knight takes c3, then after pawn takes and bishop takes, white can play queen to b3, forking the bishop and the f7 pawn, and taking the rook definitely is too dangerous. If black takes that rook, then there is check, king f8, bishop a3 check, knight to e7, and rook takes bishop, and you can see that black's king is in trouble. Black has no development at all, and soon white will also bring his rook back to e1, so in short, terrible for black. Now, and if instead the bishop takes, that's clearly not better, because after pawn takes and knight takes, again there is queen to b3, forking the knight and f7, and black has a losing position. So that's why, after castles, black played bishop to e6, bishop to g5, white is taking the initiative, bishop e7 blocks, bishop takes d5, Steinitz traded twice on d5, bishop takes, knight takes, queen takes, and after bishop takes e7, knight takes e7, rook to e1, knight is pinned to the king, which of course still didn't manage to castle. Black played f6, hoping to play king f7, escaping the pin and also connecting the rooks. And here, Steinitz played queen to e2, applying more pressure on e7, but he had another good option instead of this one. Steinitz could have also played queen a4 check, and after queen to d7, queen to b4, attacking the b pawn and keeping an eye on the knight. And if black defends that pawn with b6, then white has a nice win after rook takes knight check, and after queen takes rook e1, black loses the queen and the game. That didn't happen though. After f6, Steinitz played queen to e2, queen d7 defending the knight, rook from a to c1, taking the half-open file, c6, and now Steinitz played a very famous clearance sacrifice, d5. So he gives away the d-pawn just to make room for the knight on d4. Black took that pawn, knight to d4, planning knight to e6, where multiple threats are in the air like rook to c7 and knight takes g7. The king fled to f7, knight e6. Now Steinitz wants to play rook to c7. Therefore, rook from h to c8. Queen to g4, threatening queen takes g7 check and then mate on f8. g6. Knight g5 check with a discovered attack on the queen. So black has to go king to e8. But now Steinitz played the start of one of the most famous combinations ever. He played rook takes e7 check, which seems to sacrifice the exchange, but is actually not a sacrifice because black cannot take the rook. If the queen takes, then after rook takes rook, rook takes and queen takes rook check, black is just down a piece. And if king takes, then there are multiple ways to win. One of them is rook e1 check, king to d6, queen b4 check. Now blocking with the rook doesn't really help because after rook e6 check, black now has to either give the queen or give up the rook if the king goes to c7. So therefore after king d6, queen b4 check, the king goes to c7. Not king to c6 because that's checkmate after rook to c1. And now white wins after knight e6 check, king to b8, queen f4 check, and after blocking with the rook, white just goes knight takes rook, and after queen takes, rook e8 is checkmate. So it's clear that black cannot touch that rook. Therefore, after rook takes e7, black went king to f8, rook f7 check, king to g8, then rook g7 check. White wants to drag the king to g7, so that queen takes queen comes with check if the king takes that rook. King to h8, and then after rook takes a7 check, von Bardeleben decided to resign the game. The story actually goes that he didn't really resign, because he just stood up from his chair, left the tournament hall and never came back. So von Bardeleben was a pretty sore loser. Anyway, the game could have ended like this. King to g8, rook g7 check. Now king to f8 loses, because white can go knight h7 check. And now the king has to take the rook, otherwise queen takes queen is checkmate. So king takes rook, but then there's just queen d7 check. And next, black just loses his rooks and it's game over. But if instead black goes king to h8, now the queen checks on the h-file, queen h4 check, and it's actually forced checkmate. Watch. King takes g7, queen h7 check, king to f8, queen h8 check, king to e7, queen g7 check, king to e8, queen g8 check, king e7, queen f7 check, king to d8, and after queen f8 check, queen e8 only move. Now the game ends with knight f7 check, king to d7, and queen d6 checkmate. Kinda long sequence, but von Bardeleben did see it coming, and he just didn't want to see it on the board. So the game ended right here after rook takes h7. So, great game by Steinitz, especially that d5 pawn sacrifice to make room for the knight made this game especially famous, because that really wasn't a common idea at the time. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this game too. A new game is coming your way soon, of course, and as always, thank you for watching Chess Student and take care.